Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Glenn Rawson, and it is Sunday night, June 16th, 2024. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. I wanted to come outside today because it is a beautiful day, and I just love looking at the mountains, and I hope you don't mind. Thank you for joining me tonight, and as always, I wanted to invite you, if you have not yet signed up to receive the free stories, well, please do so. They're free. You get a weekly story of these sent right to your email every Sunday morning. And if you know someone that needs them, please let them know. Also, I wanted to let you know, I just came back off of tour with some of the most wonderful people. Oh, my word. We had so much fun. There were only 10 of us in a small van, 11 of us total, I guess. And we had a great time, and I am really going to miss them. They were good people. This same tour, this trail tour that we just came back off of, was a very intense experience, a learning experience for us, all of us, and we had a good time. That trail tour is going to happen again in September, and if you might be interested in coming on it, it will be available at historyofthesaints.org. I would invite you to come. If you want to know more about the Pioneer Trail, the Oregon, California Pioneer Mormon Trail, the Pony Express Trail, come with me in September and you'll see more about it. Now, as always, I invite you to have a prayer in your heart for me and for each of you. This first story is kind of a prelude, if you will, to the martyrdom of the prophet Joseph Smith. I pray for the Spirit of the Lord to help me with this story because it's really important. Okay, here we go. June 1844, Hancock County, Illinois was in an uproar and on the verge of a civil war. So dangerous was the situation in the county that Governor Thomas Ford had come all the way to Carthage, to the county seat, just to restore order. Rumor and misinformation had so swayed the populace that it seemed that all the citizens in Hancock County were angry with and afraid of the Latter-day Saints in Nauvoo. Their hatred boiled over into mob violence and threats. The saints in Nauvoo prepared for what seemed to be an imminent attack. Rumors carried that a mob would storm the city from the prairies to the east, reinforced, ominously, by 1,500 to 2,000 mobbers from Missouri. That's a credible threat. Joseph Smith, the mayor, placed the city under martial law, effectively sealing it off, guarding every road in and out and those who came and went. And what did the mob want? Ultimately, what did the mob want with all of their anger? They wanted Joseph and Hiram Smith. Warrants had been issued for the two men's arrest, and twice they had stood before duly constituted courts in Nauvoo and been freed of the charges against them. But this action only inflamed the ire of the citizens of the county against the two brothers. Did these men think themselves somehow above the law? Thomas Sharp had editorialized in his paper in Warsaw, quote, "War and extermination is inevitable. Citizens arise one and all. Can you stand by and suffer such infernal devils to rob men of their property and rights without avenging them? We have no comment. Every man will make his own. Let it be made with powder and ball." That's the kind of thing that was going on in the county. Everyone was against Joseph Smith. Even the governor came, as I said, and demanded that Joseph come to Carthage and be tried a third time for the same charges. On the other hand, though, Ford refused to listen to Joseph's side of the story, to come to Nauvoo and hear what really happened. Instead, he stood back imperiously and levied judgment on Joseph's actions without listening to him. Ford then went further, and when he gathered up people to support him, he gathered up the most anti-Mormon mobocrats in Hancock County and and mustered them as his law enforcement. Everyone in the state, either way, from the highest authority to the lowliest mobocrat, was against Joseph. Popular opinion hated him. And how dangerous was the threat? I mean, really? Joseph had stated, quote, if he and Hiram were ever taken again, they would be massacred, for he was not a prophet of God. Well, at this critical moment, Joseph wrote letters in the summer of 1844 to the Quorum of the 12, requesting that they return immediately. In one of those letters, it appears that Joseph wrote, quote, I advised my brother Hiram to take his family on the next steamboat and go to Cincinnati. Hiram replied, Joseph, I can't leave you. Whereupon Joseph said to the company present, I wish I could get Hiram out of the way so that he may live to avenge my blood. End of quote. Hiram would not leave. And 1 week later, June 27th, 1844, Hiram fell a martyr, offering his life freely. Brigham Young said of the integrity of Hiram, Hiram was as good a man as ever lived. His integrity was of the highest order. I used to think, and think now, that an angel dwelling in the presence of the Father and the Son possessed no more integrity in their hearts than did Hiram Smith. Now, why do I tell you this story? What's the point? Well, because today we live in the times when the mists of darkness are particularly heavy. We live in those times when the very elect among us are being deceived and turning their backs on Joseph, on the church, and ultimately upon the Savior. I would that Hiram's words be caught up among us and spread far and wide. Joseph, I can't leave you. While we were out on tour there in Quincy, Illinois, I took my group to the John Wood Mansion. John Wood is an interesting fellow. I would like to tell you something about this remarkable man who was a friend of the Latter-day Saints. February 1839, Quincy, Illinois. Hundreds of starving, freezing Latter-day Saint refugees lined the west bank of the Mississippi River across from Quincy. Rumors had preceded them from Missouri that the Mormons were a violent lot of ne'er-do-wells driven from Missouri for the public good. Their presence across the waters created anxiety and some conflict among the citizens of the city. Should the people of Quincy help them or turn them away? After hearing their story, and at the persuasions of John Wood, the citizens of Quincy came together in an effort to relieve, I'm quoting, to relieve so far as in their power the wants of the destitute and houseless, and to use their utmost endeavors to procure employment for those who are able and willing to labor. End of quote. And as I said, leading that rally to the support of the victims was the city's mayor and founder, John Wood. Now, who is John Wood? Well, he had come from the east and had settled on the bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River, and that place would eventually become Quincy, Illinois. He was a man who believed in good works, in kindness, and Christian compassion. Those values carried Wood all the days of his life. So, as a result of that, the citizens of Quincy and the surrounding county, some 1,600 in number, took in thousands of Latter-day Saints providing food, shelter, and employment. It is said, and that with good merit, that John Wood and the people of Quincy temporarily saved the church in the winter of 1839. And that was not the end of it. John Wood remained a friend of Joseph Smith and the Saints for the remainder of the time that the Saints were in Illinois and Joseph was alive. Joseph even dined in the Wood mansion. Joseph would later refer to Quincy, the city, as our first noble city of refuge. Now, the winter of 1839 would not be the only time that this remarkable man and the people of his city would come to the aid of a people that no one else wanted. In September of 1846, angry mobs, surrounded the few saints left in the city of Nauvoo. Wood and four other men traveled up from Quincy with the idea in mind to negotiate a truce or a peace between the mobs and the Mormons. And when he got there, quote, they discovered that the mobs were indignant. Wood said that they and the other peace negotiators were indignant at the villainous conduct of the mob towards an oppressed and defenseless community. End of quote. That was Wood. You can't treat these people this way. The Quincy delegation negotiated a settlement, but as quickly as the saints abode by the agreement and laid down their arms, the mob swept into the city, violated every provision of the treaty, and took it over. The saints were driven out, forced across the river into Iowa, where they camped in a swamp at the river's edge, while mobbers ran to the top of the Nauvoo temple and proclaimed with a loud voice, "Praise God, the Mormons is driven." Well, the saints were dwelling in a dank and lowly swamp with no means to move on and join Brigham at the Missouri River. Wood went over the river to the Iowa side and visited the saints' camp. The people there were, quoting, starving under the open heavens with not even a tent to cover them. What did Wood do? He immediately returned downriver to Quincy, published a notice in the newspaper dated September 23rd, 1846, and it stated that he had just returned from the camp of the Mormons and represented, quoting, that they are in need of all kinds of clothing, materials, tents, shoes, and etc. And under Wood's encouragement and direction, the people of Quincy once again gathered the means of survival, loaded it on the first steamboat going upriver, and sent it up to the saints in the poor camp at Potter's Slough. The saints received the proffered gifts, and by that aid and with others that would follow, they began their journey to the Rocky Mountains. John Wood would go on to serve his community and state in positions of honor, eventually even serving as the governor of Illinois. Now, it's worthy of note that this was not the only time. Quincy has a rich history of benevolence and compassion, not only for Mormons, but Native Americans and slaves. The Underground Railroad ran right through Quincy. The kind and generous heart of Quincy's founder and mayor, John Wood, shaped that city. It shaped the heritage and shaped the future. Today, Quincy is a thriving, prosperous, beautiful, clean city. And it remembers, the people remember their heritage. I tell you again, and I've said it before, one good man or woman determined not only can influence the present around them, but can shape the future. Next story. Henry Green Boyle was baptized the 20th of November, 1843 on Bluestone, Tazewell County, Virginia. Before being baptized, Henry had heard all the slander spoken against the Latter-day Saints. Yet the truth spoke to him, and he joined the saints. Henry would later write, quote, "No sooner had I done so than my friends became my enemies and turned against me. My father and mother had not had much chance to investigate Mormonism, and hearing only one side of the question, they were very much opposed to me. Father told me I should quit the Mormons or leave his house. Henry said this was unexpected to me. My feelings were so hurt. I did not want to see any person. Therefore, I tied up a few clothes in a handkerchief and left my once beloved home. Can you imagine how much that would hurt? He went to the house of a friend named Randall Holbrook. And while there, he had occasion to meet two men. They were ostensibly lawmen, one named McDowell and the other named White. I quote from Henry's autobiography, quote, McDowell commenced to speak evil of the Mormons and said I had played the devil with myself. And if he was my father, he would whip the devil out of me. Henry said, I saw that he wished to get a quarrel with me, and I knew him to be a bad man. He was called a bully and was always fighting when he could get anyone to fight him and was always successful. You get the picture? I did not want any trouble with him, Henry said, and told him that I did not. But nothing but a row, a fight, would satisfy him. Evidently, McDowell went on. He said that I believed the signs would follow me, and he was going to test the matter by pitching me into the fire and see if I would come out like the 3 Hebrew children without the smell of fire on my clothes. Now get this. He said Joe Smith, was an imposter, a murderer, and everything bad, and I would soon be as bad as Smith. Henry said, when this came out, I hauled away and knocked him down. He got up, and I knocked him down a second time after striking him 3 times. Then Henry said, I struck him in the face and the eyes and the mouth until the blood poured from him. But he managed to get up with me, for he was a stout man and weighed 180 pounds, and throwed me back, he said, over a chair into the corner of the counter among some nail kegs and castings. White, the other guy, seeing I was going to get up, came and stood on my feet, and McDowell was getting out his knife to use on me. And Henry said, I picked up an oven lid that happened to be near, and I struck McDowell 3 times with it before White could get it away from me. And this, he said, laid him out lifeless. Just at this time, Samuel Graham, the storekeeper, came in and pulled White off my feet, and I got up. I was not hurt a particle, but it was a long time before McDowell was brought to his right senses. He did not speak for 2 days, and he did not get well for 6 months. He concludes with this. Most all the people in the community were glad that I had used him up. Used him up is a 19th century expression meaning beat the crap out of him. I stayed at Holbrook's for a few days. When I came to the conclusion, Henry said, I would go to Nauvoo as soon as I could get means to pay my way, where I knew I would be in the midst of friends. I like that. End of quote. Well, Henry Green Boyle did indeed go on to Nauvoo, and with the saints, his friends, all the way to the Rocky Mountains. Along the way, Henry Green Boyle served 10 missions, including as the first president of the Southern States Mission. Now, I don't know how you take that story, but I felt strongly impressed to share it with you. I'm not advocating that we defend the faith the way Henry did, unless it comes to it. But one way or the other, the Lord needs people willing to fight in defense of the faith. I have often contended, as have others, that the people who knew Joseph Smith the best, his family, Emma, were those who defended him the most. Those, if he were a fraud and a charlatan, those closest to him who were people of integrity would have exposed him. But they loved him the most, and they defended him the most firmly. for example. In the summer of 1829, while the Book of Mormon was in process of printing at E.B. Grandin's print shop in Palmyra, Oliver Cowdery overheard a group of Palmyra residents plotting and scheming against the Book of Mormon. It seems that their plan was to snatch the manuscript away from Mother Lucy Mack Smith and burn it. So according to their plan, they came to the house, she was warned, and asked her to read the manuscript to them. The following is Mother Smith's account of those events. Listen to this. Mrs. Smith, we hear that you have a gold Bible. We've come to see if you'll be so kind as to show it to us. To which she said, no, gentlemen, we have no gold Bible, but we have a translation of some gold plates which have been brought forth for the purpose of making known to the world the plainness of the gospel, and also to give a history of the people which formerly inhabited this continent. And Mother Smith then said, I then proceeded to relate the substance of what is contained in the Book of Mormon, dwelling particularly upon the principles of religion therein contained. I endeavored, she said, to show them the similarity between those principles, meaning in the Book of Mormon, and the simplicity of the gospel taught by Jesus Christ in the New Testament. Notwithstanding all this, she said, the different denominations are very much opposed to us. The Universalists, she said, are alarmed lest their religion should suffer loss. The Presbyterians tremble because of their salaries. The Methodists also come, and they rage, for they worship a God without body or parts, and they know that our faith comes in contact with this principle. After hearing me through, she said, the gentlemen, which were of another church, said, can we see the manuscript then? Mother Smith said, no, sir, you cannot see it. I've told you what it contains, and that must suffice. Well, he made no reply to this, but then he said, Mrs. Smith, you and most of your children have belonged to our church for some length of time, and we respect you very highly. You say a good deal about the Book of Mormon, which your son has found, and you believe much of what he tells you. Yet we cannot bear the thought of losing you, and they do wish, I wish, that if you believe those things, you would not say anything more upon the subject. I do wish you would not, he concluded. Mother Smith then responded, Deacon Beckwith, if you should stick my flesh full of faggots and even burn me at the stake, I would declare as long as God should give me breath that Joseph has got that record and that I know it to be true. End of quote. At this, Deacon Beckwith turned to his companions and said, you see, it's of no use to say anything more to her, for we cannot change her mind. And then turning to Mother Smith, he said, Mrs. Smith, I see that it is not possible to persuade you out of your belief. Therefore, I deem it necessary to say anything more upon the subject. To which Mother Smith said, no, sir, it's not worth your while. He then bade me farewell, Mother Smith said, and went out to see Hiram when the following conversation took place between them. Deacon Beckwith said to Hiram, Mr. Smith, do you not think that you may be deceived about that record which your brother pretends to have found? Hiram said, no, sir, I do not. Deacon Beckwith, well now, Mr. Smith, if you find that you are deceived and that he has not got that record, will you confess the fact to me? To which Hiram responded, this is good. Deacon Beckwith, will you take one of the books when they're printed and read and read it, asking God to give you an evidence that you may know whether it is true? Deacon Beckwith said, well, I think it beneath me to take so much trouble. However, if you will promise that you will confess to me that Joseph never had the plates, I will ask for a witness whether the book is true. Hiram responded, I'll tell you what I will do, Mr. Beckwith. If you get a testimony from God that the book is not true, I will confess to you that it is not true. Upon this, they parted. Now, the deacon was not done yet. He went to Samuel Smith, Joseph's younger brother, who quoted to him. He did the same thing with Samuel, tried to persuade him, but Samuel simply quoted to him these verses from Isaiah. Quote, all ye beasts of the field, come to devour. yea, all ye beasts in the forest. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark. Sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yea, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. And they are shepherds, and that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, every one for his gain from his quarter. And at this point, Samuel ended the quotation, and Mother Smith said, the three gentlemen left without ceremony. That's Lucy Mack Smith's History of Joseph, pages 162 and 163. Brothers and sisters, my friends, let's defend the faith. And I know that you're not going to go out and get in a fist fight. And I know that you're probably not going to square off with a minister of another church, and that wouldn't do you much good even if you did. But you can certainly stand up and fast and testimony me, or the next time you're called upon to give a talk, and declare with fervor, passion, by the power of the Spirit, that Jesus is the Christ, and his gospel and his church have been restored in their fullness and purity as they were in New Testament times, and that Joseph is his prophet, and that the Book of Mormon is true, and that we have the authority, power, and keys of the Holy Priesthood. God bless you all. Good night.